Today we are going to conclude the Age of Dryden, that is the portion of prose and the drama. Before starting, tell me about how are you all? Okay, I hope you all are alright. Now we are moving forward to the Age of Dryden, that is the rise of modern prose. The Restoration, says Matthew Arnold, marks the real moment of birth of our modern English prose. It is by its organism as organism opposed to length and involvement and enabling us to clear, plain and short that English prose after the Restoration breaks with the style of the times preceding it, finds the true law of prose and becomes modern, becomes in spite of superficial difference the style of our own day. From the historical point of view, the establishment of this modern prose is the greatest single fact in the literary annals of the Age of Dryden. We can easily put Arnold's statement to the test of reading a page out of Milton's Areopagitica and then a page of Dryden or Defoe or Edison, and noting the fundamental difference between them. Of Milton's style, we instinctively say we should never for a moment think of trying to write like that. Of the style of Dryden, Defoe, Edison, this, though in places a little archaic in manner, is after all very much our own way of writing. The older prose, the prose of such men as Hooker, Milton, and in Dryden's own time, the Clarendon and Jeremy. Moving toward the next page. Taylor was, we have learned, too intricate, involved and cumbrous for general use. The sentences were long, parentheses were numerous. The construction adopted was often that rather of Latin than of English syntax. In the new prose, all this is changed. The sentences are much shorter and simpler. The large straggling masses are broken up. The parentheses and classical inversions are clearly away. Such changes made it is evident for ease in writing and reading, and for directness and lucidity. Many causes combine in the introduction and establishment of new prose. The spread of the spirit of common sense and of critical temper of mind, which was so injurious to the higher interests of poetry, had itself a good deal to do with it. The extending influence of science, which favored clearness of thought and plainness of expression, must also be recognized. Then it must be remembered that a new kind of public was growing up, which was far more miscellaneous and varied in character than that which hitherto and possessed the practical monopoly of literary interest. And the tastes and capacities of this increasingly large body of general readers had to be consulted by those who catered for them. In an age of unceasing political religious excitement, there was immense development of that sort of evanescent literature which we now class under the head of journalism. The general reader and the reader-writer thus appeared together, each reacted upon the other, and this change of public necessarily meant that things which had formerly been treated in dry pedantic, the difficult way had to be made simple and pleasant. All these influence told in the transformation which our prose now underwent, and to this we have to add the further influence of French literature in advance of all European countries. France had already evolved a kind of prose which, in its clearness, flexibility and good taste, was admirably adapted for all the purposes of ordinary exposition, discussion and social intercourse. This prose provided just the model that the English writers needed for their guidance. The establishment of the new prose was not quite so sudden as Arnold's statement might lead us to think, nor was it the work of any one man, but in a brief survey like this, Dryden has his special claim upon our attention as the first of our really great prose writers in the modern style. Dryden's prose work, apart from a good deal of mere hack work, which may of course be discarded, Dryden's prose writing consists mainly of essays and prefaces dealing with a large range of questions connected with poetry and the drama. Here again we perceive the thoroughly representative character of his production. As the Restoration saw the rise of a naive prose, so also it saw the real beginning of the modern criticism. For though, as we have noted, there had already been a certain amount of criticism in England, it was now for the first time that people addressed themselves systematically to the study of the principles and the laws of literature. In this growth of criticism and of corresponding tendency to check the guide production by line and rule, we have another illustration of the spirit of an age which was far stronger on the side of analysis than on the imagination imagination, and in which the intellectual dominated over the creative powers. And Dryden, our first great modern prose writer, is also our first great modern critic. In the course of his criticism, he takes up and discusses, and from various points of view, nearly all topics which were of interest to the literary worlds of his time. The form and method of the drama, for example, the element of heroic and epic poetry, the relations of art and nature, the qualities of great writers of Greece and Rome, and so on. His work is thus of capital importance as a commentary upon the taste and ideals of the rising classical school of literature. On the whole, his best criticism is to be found in his writing on the drama, particularly in the earliest and the most masterly of all of them, the essay of dramatic poesy, in which he considers the respective principles and merits of the three chief types of drama: the classical drama of the Greeks and Romans, the new classical drama of the French, and the romantic drama of the English, and among the other matters undertakes to justify the use of rhyme in place of blank verse on the stage, and to vindicate the honor of our English writers from the censure of those who unjustly prefer the French before them. Dryden often writes hastily and is habitually careless in detail, and as in general he accepted the limitations and prejudices of his age. A good deal of his criticism, while historically important, has but slight permanent value. At the same time, we can seldom fail to be struck by the sound good sense in which he brings to bear upon almost every subject he touches. His sagacity and penetration are indeed remarkable, while his prose style is characterized by clearness, vigor, a wonderful felicity of phrasing, and a colloquial ease which preserve a literary distinction and rarely descend to the level of the slipshod or the commonplace. Banyan, the only other really great name in the prose literature of Dryden's age, is that of John Banyan, the son of tinker who he himself afterwards followed. Banyan was born at Elstow, Bedfordshire, fought for a time in the Civil War, though on which side is uncertain, was converted, married early, and in 1655 began to preach on village greens. Continuing the practice after the Restoration, he was soon convicted as a common upholder of several unlawful meetings and conventicles, and committed to the Bedford jail, where he remained 12 years. His autobiography, Grace Abounding, was the work of his captivity. The first part of the Pilgrim's Progress belonged to a second imprisonment of 6 months in 1675. Meanwhile, he had obtained a license to preach and had become the regular minister of the Baptist congregation, then meeting in a barn at Bedford. In his later years, he was also famous as a preacher in London. It was a visit to London that he died, and he was buried in the old dissenters' burial ground at Banyan Field, where Defoe and Isaac Watts were afterward to be laid to rest. Banyan wrote much, but his four great works are Grace Abounding, The Pilgrim's Progress, The Life and Death of Mr. Badman, and The Holy War. There are many things about Banyan which make him a very important figure in literary history. His wonderful imagination gave him a place almost by himself in an unimaginative age. He is the only man in our literature who has ever succeeded in writing a long prose allegory and in filling it throughout without any sacrifice of the symbolism with the absorbing interest of a real human story. The combined vividness and plainness of his writing is another remarkable feature of his work. Banyan was not an educated man. He knew nothing of the classics, nothing about theories of literature, little or nothing even about English literature, but he had the authorized version of the English Bible by heart, and he was endowed by nature with a genius for style. Few writers, no matter what their training and accomplishments, have in fact ever shown a keener sense of right words and the telling phrase. At this time, the contrast with Milton becomes significant. Both were Puritans, as we have seen. Milton, the master of all learning of the school, was fed also by the Renaissance, while Banyan, in the most unqualified sense of term, was the child of Puritanism only. If therefore we were asked to the name of greatest product of Puritanism in English literature, our choice should fall the Pilgrim's Progress rather than on Paradise Lost. Finally, we must not overlook Banyan's position in the evolution of English prose fiction. The controlled didactic purpose of the allegorical form prevent us from putting the Pilgrim's Progress into the class of regular modern novels. It so well sustained is the interest of the narrative, the characters, the dialogue, so great is the dramatic power, and so firm is the grasp of ordinary life, that it must at least be regarded as the forerunner of the novel. Other prose writer of the period, Sir William Temple, who is best known through his relations with Swift, and who wrote later an essay in a plain but polished style, and John Tillotson, who, abandoning the older tradition of the pulpit, introduced a similar style into religious oratory, have a certain importance in the establishment of a new prose. The great value of the prose in philosophical exposition and discussion was distinctly shown by John Locke in his essay on the Human Understanding treatise on government and thought on education. But the most interesting minor prose writing of the time for the general reader is to be found in the work of two dietarists, John Evelyn and Samuel Pepys. Evelyn's diary is now read mainly as a record of contemporary events as seen from the point of view of a loyal, thoughtful and high-minded royalist. It is written a grave, simple style. Pepys's diaries, on the other hand, apart altogether from its historical value, is one of the most entertaining of books and the most extraordinary thing of its kind in any literature. It covers a period of nearly 10 years from 1st January 1660 to 31st May 1669, when the writer's eyesight gave out, and therefore includes among many other noteworthy occurrences the Restoration, the Great Plague, and the Great Fire. But its principal interest lies in the vivid description which it gives of the men and manners of the day, and the habit, fashion, and scandal of the town, in its reproduction of the gossip of the street, the coffee houses and the playhouses, and in its record of personal life and doing, the domestic troubles, the jealousies, philanderings, success and disappointments of the irrepressible diarist himself. Pepsi did not write for the public eye but for himself alone. He used a shorthand which was not deciphered till the early 19th century, and so certain was he of the inviolable secrecy of his journal that he did not scruple to entrust it with his inmost thoughts and feelings as a revelation of character from the inside. The diary is unique, the drama of the Age of Dryden. We need not give much space to this part of our subject. The theatre was now almost wholly the creature of the demoralized world of fashion, and it everywhere reflected the taste of its patrons. In the comedy of time, the comedy of restoration, as it is generally though loosely called, the chief names are those of William Wycherley, William Congreve, the most brilliant writer of the group and one of our greatest master of artificial comedy, John Van Brugh and George Farquhar. The work of this man is a rule and wonderfully clever. It has depth and gaiety, and its wit is abundant and unflagging, but it is entirely lacking in truth to nature, while in its open and unabashed indecency it reveals at its worst the spirit of the society for whose amusement it was produced. Its grossness in the end drew down upon it a tremendous castigation from the rude Jeremy Collier, whose short view of profaneness and immortality of the English stage caused an immense sensation and had salutary effect. Tragedy, meanwhile, though it kept free from the profligacy of comedy, was equally artificial. For a time its most popular form was that of heroic drama, in which love, gallantry, and courage were depicted on a gigantic scale with little reference to life, and the dialogue of which was filled with sonorous rant and bombastic extravagance. In these heroic plays, rhyme, which it will be remembered Dryden advocated in his essay of dramatic poesy, displays blank verse. Dryden himself was the principal master of this form, which is shown in its perfection in his tyrannic love or royal martyr and the two parts of his conquest of Granada. The vogue of the heroic drama did not, however, last very long, and a reaction toward other forms set in. The Senecan or French school had its flaws, as in the case of Congreve, whose one tragedy, The Mourning Bride, is fashioned faithfully upon the regular classic model. In his All for Love, which is based on Antony and Cleopatra, Dryden now clearly of the heroic style, and the rhyme reverted to Shakespeare's, and black verse, no new dramatic lead to any value was, however, given, and the work now done for the stage possesses little value as literature. Nathaniel Lee, who wrote first in rhyme and then in blank verse, and in whom we have a little fire and a great deal of smoke, and Thomas Otway, whose Orphan and Venice preserved long kept their popularity with actors and playgoers like are the only other tragic poets of the period who need here be even named. Table of the Age of Milton, Dryden, and the Age of Dryden. This is all about the Dryden, table of the Milton and the Age of Dryden. Thank you for watching. Keep supporting this video and this channel. Like, subscribe, and share as much as you can. Thank you for watching. That's all.